prime time into a rolling pop concert. A widowed mom with Broadway pipes, 5 kids with suspiciously perfect harmonies, and one multicolored bass that looked like it lost a fight with a paint factory. Starring Shirley Jones, David Cassidy, Susan Dey, Danny Bonaduce, and a cast of kids who absolutely looked like they were playing their own instruments. They weren't, but we'll get to that. The show blended sitcom sweetness with bubblegum pop that was so catchy that at one point they were outselling the Beatles on the singles chart. But behind the tambourines and matching vests, session musicians, real family drama, a mailroom that operated at federal scale, and a teen idol who wasn't sure he wanted to be one. Today, we're going to count down 15 weird facts about the Partridge Family, the kind that make you rewatch The Painted Bus a little bit differently. But before we start, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. And stick around for number 1 because it completely changes how you see the grumpiest manager in TV history. Now come on, get happy and let's get into it. Number 15, the Milli Vanilli of 1970. Velvet suits, tambourine shaking, and perfect rhythm, the Partridge Kids harmonizing like they just stepped out of pop heaven. Yeah, about that. Aside from Shirley Jones, legit Broadway royalty, and David Cassidy, who basically strong-armed producers into letting him sing, the rest of the cast didn't play instruments on those records and contributed little to no studio vocals. The tracks? Well, they were laid down by top-tier LA session musicians, many of them associated with the legendary Wrecking Crew, the same players behind Pet Sounds and a mountain of 60s hits. That bass line on I Think I Love You? Yeah, that's not coming from a wisecracking red-headed kid. That was elite, chart-dominating muscle. And those big, glossy harmonies floating behind the chorus? The Ron Hicklin singers. Basically the vocal cheat code for half of 1970s TV. So yeah, Milli Vanilli of the early 70s. The music was actually phenomenal. I Think I Love You hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 that November, putting a fictional TV family at the top of the same chart that the Beatles had dominated. And we didn't question it for a second. 50 years later, and we're still humming it. That's the kind of con job that you just have to respect. Number 14, the real-life Partridges who weren't. The Partridge Family wasn't cooked up from scratch. The concept was heavily inspired by a very real band, the Cowsills. Actual siblings, actual hits. The Rain, The Park and Other Things, Hair, late 60s bubblegum gold. Producers at Screen Gems saw them and thought, hey, that's a concept. And according to members of the band, early discussions floated the idea of involving the real band in the show. So what happened? Mom happened. The studio wanted star power. They had their sights set on Shirley Jones, an Oscar winner, Broadway legend, legit pipes. According to the band, the Cowsills kids were open to it, but only if their real mother, Barbara Castle, was included on screen. And the studio said nope. Cowsills, well, they said no deal. And just like that, Hollywood did what Hollywood does best. They kept the concept and swapped the family. They hired Shirley Jones, they cast actors as the kids, found a bus, painted it, and built a fictionalized version inspired by a real band story. Meanwhile, the actual Cowsills watched a TV family loosely based on them become a merchandising juggernaut. One conversation changed pop culture history somewhere in Newport, Rhode Island. That has to sting just a little. Number 13, the secret family tree. Now here's something that most fans never picked up on. Shirley Jones, the TV mom, was David Cassidy's actual stepmother. In real life, she was married to his father, who was a Tony-winning Broadway performer, Jack Cassidy. Producers have said that David won the role through auditions and screen tests, though the fact that his real-life stepmom was already cast certainly didn't hurt. But once cameras started rolling, the dynamic got weird and fast. Think about it. You're 19 when the show premieres, and you're becoming one of the biggest teen idols in the world. Girls are screaming your name in every city, and your stepmom is just standing right there on set playing your mother, watching the whole thing unfold under studio lights. In his autobiography and later interviews, Cassidy acknowledged that fame combined with complicated family dynamics created real tension behind the scenes, even if it never spilled into the show itself. Despite the weirdness, the two kept it professional. Shirley brought Broadway-level discipline to every scene, and Cassidy matched it. Whatever was strange about the situation stayed off camera. Number 12, the accidental icon. When the Partridge Family went into production at Screen Gems, singing wasn't part of the plan for David Cassidy. Show up, look the part, mouth the words, collect the check. Every note was already covered by studio pros. Except Cassidy had grown up around music. He worshipped Hendrix, he listened to B.B. King, and when producers led him into the recording booth during the early sessions, what he described later as almost a formality, he walked out with something nobody expected, an actual voice, tone, grit, and a pop instinct that you can't fake with session singers. Producers pivoted fast. Cassidy became the real lead voice on the records. Albums flew off the shelves. By 1972, he was everywhere. Lunchboxes, pillowcases, sold-out arenas across the globe. At his peak, some estimates had him outselling every solo artist in America. The fictional kid from a fictional band had become one of the most bankable entertainers on the planet. But that level of fame has a cost, and on May 26th of 1974, it came due. White City Stadium in London, an estimated 30 to 35,000 fans packed in. When Cassidy hit the stage, the crowd surged forward. It turned into chaos. Hundreds were treated for injuries, with over 100 hospitalized. A 14-year-old fan, Bernadette Wynne, later died from injuries sustained in the crush. It shook the UK, and it deeply affected Cassidy. He later said that he felt like a piece of merchandise. That's not drama, that's exhaustion. He wanted to be taken seriously as a musician, but instead his face was stamped on merch while teenagers were getting hurt in stadium aisles. After the show ended, Cassidy chased solo albums with more depth, acting roles with more range, Vegas residencies that kept him working but never recaptured that rocket fuel. The Teen Idol label stuck like duct tape. No matter what he did, the world kept pulling him back to Keith Partridge and that painted bus. Number 11. The Tragic Fate of the Painted Bus. If the Partridge Family had a mascot, it wasn't Danny's wisecracks or even Keith's hair. It was that bus. The multicolored Chevrolet school bus, often described as Mondrian-inspired, became one of the most recognizable vehicles on 1970s TV. It wasn't built as a showpiece. It was a used school bus purchased from the Orange County School District for roughly $500, repainted and customized for the series, and transformed into a rolling pop culture billboard with better branding than most actual rock bands. For 4 seasons, it carried the Come On Get Happy fantasy. Then the show got canceled and the bus, it just vanished. After the series wrapped in 1974, the bus was reportedly repainted white and recycled into another production, Apple's Way, filmed on the same lot. From there, the trail goes cold.